Our men's breakfast we have the first Saturday of each month at Hope Community. It's a non-denominational get-together, and all men of the community are welcome to join us. And I got to meet Ryan. Ryan and his wife Sarah, who are with us this morning. Ryan goes on missionary work through 8 Days of Hope. He'll share all that with you, but he goes on when there's a tornado, and he just told me they're leaving again. They've been home for 2 weeks maybe, just under 2 weeks, and they're going to be off again, doing some 8 Days of Hope work. But they've been down in Kentucky, Missouri, all over the United States, helping people after tornadoes, recovering and getting them back in their homes and trying to help them out. But missions committee had been wanting to invite Ryan to come speak, and Pastor Sean was going to take the Sunday off, and they said, well, we're having trouble finding a speaker. And I said, I think I know a guy who might be willing to come and share. We've been wanting him to share his mission work with us, so Ryan said he would gladly do that. So Ryan, we're glad to have you with us this morning, and share your story.
Get my clicker and stuff out. I could have just flipped through the slides. He got half of it right there. And get my notes up real quick. Okay. So, as he said, I'm Ryan Smith, my wife Sarah. To get a little bit of reference, but a little bit of backstory on us, because most of you probably don't know me. Some of you might know her and her family. But I grew up in Francisville, Indiana, just down the road. She grew up here in Rensselaer. We met at a church event that was held in Franceville, where she came and talked about teen mission to all of us idiot high schoolers. And little did I know how much I was going to get roped into that eventually. So through that, we dated throughout high school. I went to college at Vincennes University. I'd like to think she followed me there, though she claimed it was for their welding program. But I went to college, got a 2-year degree in residential construction. This all wraps in eventually. I worked the first 6 years or so of my life, all through high school and after high school, in construction here in Francisville. While I was still in high school, I came across the news footage in class of Harvey hitting Houston. And as my teacher in social studies was showing us all the devastation and whatnot from Harvey, something just nicked on the back of my neck saying, you should go down there and do that, because you can go down there, you know how those houses work, you can put them back together, you can do stuff. I didn't know what that meant. So I started calling some of the youth pastors and stuff in my area that I had been involved with. Turns out that Aaron Malco, the guy I worked construction with for 3 years running, was going down there with a group called 8 Days of Hope to help clean up houses that had been flooded from Harvey. So I flew out down there with him, and that started a long growing journey with 8 Days of Hope. As through the rest of high school, I can tell you the day, because you had to be 18 years to go down to that. You had to be 18 years old to go down on that rapid response. So on October 7th, I went down because I turned 18. While we were down there, I grew up in a small little country church in which scriptures were read, but you didn't really see them. We came to church Sunday, and it became more of a cycle, more of a religion. It was, you came to church Sunday, you went to church Wednesday, that's what you do. So for me, that's what that meant. But I got down there amongst those Christians, and I saw God moving. They said, we're here to be the hands and feet of Jesus, and I saw them selflessly serving with no benefit to themselves for the week that we were down there. And that hooked me, not only to the missions trips, but I saw the Holy Spirit and the Holy Fire in a way that I'd never seen it before. I believe I was saved at that point, but I believed I just didn't quite understand what that entirely meant. I began to learn very quickly with 8 Days of Hope. I continued to skip out of my college classes, because, why not, and go on trips with them anyway, all through college. And every trip I went, they just got a little stronger and a little stronger, not only in my faith, but in my will to serve. And eventually, through dating Sarah, I said, I think I'm going to make this my full-time gig. I think this is where I'm heading. Do you want to follow me there or not? And she said, yeah, I'll follow you in that. So we end up getting married, and that's what we do now. So for a verse for that, I picked this verse, and she kind of roped in there because this meant a lot to me, because the Christians that I witnessed on that first 8 days trip lived this verse. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see you, your good works, and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. I watched them down there, and I watched their light that they had shine to that community, and I wanted that. So I picked that verse because I hope that we can be the same when we go into these communities and when we serve in all the different branches of ministry we're involved with. That's my hope and dream, that we can continue to be the same and challenge other Christians to be the light to the world. So when we created our little non-for-profit to run all of our mission work, we decided we needed 3 goals. Number 1, we want to spread the love of Jesus. We want to spread the gospel. The Great Commission, that is the calling. That's our number 1 goal. Number 2 is to use our God-given skills to further his kingdom. So we do a lot of trips that are labor-based missions. I'm just your average knucklehead man. That's what I'm good at. I can go work a long day, and I can, through the skills that he is giving me through high school and whatnot in construction, I can not only work the long day, but now I understand how to teach others to follow in those skills or those labors. The third one, which is when I used to give this talk, was a long-term goal, but it's getting closer. As we started to raise support and started to do this full-time, we watched a lot of other young missionary couples start this journey and not quite be able to make it, not be able to raise the finances, not be able to juggle home life or back and forth for whatever reason. They weren't able to launch quite full-time. And when we started looking for people to teach us how to do this, or people who come alongside us, give us help, give us guidance, there's not a whole lot of resources out there for in the United States missions when you're trying to be a missionary here, of how to structure your finances, structure your fundraising, how to fundraise. There's not a lot of financials, or not a lot of support to teach you those things. So our third goal was eventually we want to be able to not only help financially support other missionaries to come with us, so it's not just us, but we've got a group, we've got a crew going to do a lot of these things, but we also want to be able to teach other young missionaries in the United States to do the same thing, kind of find the niche of what we have here. So we have several different types of trips that 8 Days of Hope goes on. And our trips aren't exactly limited to 8 Days of Hope. We do teen mission and a lot of other things outside of it, but 8 Days of Hope is 90% of what we do. So the disaster response, like what we did in Harvey, is our first thing. And with disaster response, you have floods. Whenever there's a flood in the United States, we'll come in and we do muckouts. And you want to talk about some gross work that I don't think you could pay me enough to do at home, that's what this is. I set a new record when we went down to eastern Kentucky early this year. I got into the nastiest house I've ever been into. It was a modular home. In a modular home, you've got to take all the insulation out of the bottom on the undercarriage off, because it all holds water and it all molds, and it'll become a hazard later down the road. We get down there to take all of it out to find out that the flood had busted the sewer main. So all that water down there is not water that you're rolling in. And we happen to find a lot of their missing cats down there as well. So when I say muckouts or stuff that you probably could not pay me enough money to do at home, we do it there for free. Some of these pictures that I've got up here, and when I get a lazy pointer. So if you look at this floor and this one and some of this muck out in here on the side of this house, this is from Iowa. Spencer.
The two are. The one you pointed at first is from Kentucky.
Got to keep my facts straight. That's why I bring her. Okay, either way, in a lot of these situations when you're in the cities and they flood, sewage backup is a problem. So if you look at a lot of the mud that's on the floor, that's not just river mud. So when we come in and muck out a home, it has to have all of that mud scooped out of it, All of the drywall insulation that gets wet, every wall has to be opened. Any appliances or personal belongings that they need either thrown away or moved to a different location as we go through with them. And we take the time, we go through with the homeowners to help them separate what can be saved, what can't be saved, what do you want to keep, this is what you need to do to be able to save that piece of furniture or whatever if you want to keep it, which is a long process. And I am lucky that every time I'm a crew leader on one of these, I normally get a group of ladies that will sit down with these homeowners and talk to them, because that's their life, that's their memories. Those are their baby pictures, those are their photo albums that you're trying to go through and explain that they're ruined. So I'm normally blessed that I've got a few ladies that'll sit down and talk to them through this process. But you want to talk about being a light in a dark place. They're watching their entire house, they're watching all their memories, all their stuff is going to the curb, because it's either mold covered, sewage covered, and probably can't be saved. And we'll be able to talk through that and just be a light in that way. Sometimes it's being a light to people who are already Christians, just reassuring them that no, God's still here. And sometimes you're talking to unbelievers where you're showing, well, there is a hope outside of this. But with the muck outs, 8 Days of Hope also does, we will bring in dehumidifiers and we will bring in mold remediation spray. So when we leave the homes, our goal is that it is sitting ready for a contractor to completely rebuild it. So there's no cleanup to be done. It's just ready to have new stuff go back in and get moved in. So this is what I much prefer in the disaster response world, if you can say you prefer something. 8 Days of Hope has trained people to cut trees. I am one of their lift operators, as you'll see with the 50-foot nifty lift in the photo up there. But we have the equipment and we have the training to not only cut trees that have fallen over in tornadoes, but we can take them off of the house. We can take widowmakers out. When they twist them up and pile them up, we can rig them up and take them off safely where we don't damage the properties or get anybody hurt. And taking care of the big trees that are on people's homes is kind of a little niche that sets the 8 Days of Hope apart from a lot of the other groups. We're all there for the same goal, but not a lot of the normal groups will take volunteers in and tackle trees sitting on top of $250,000 homes. They don't want the insurance, they don't want the hassle with it. So that's one little niche that kind of sets us apart. I have absolutely loved doing tree work because I don't do that here at home, so it's like a breath of fresh air to get to learn a new skill. But when we come in, to kind of put an example how big of a blessing this is, so to cut a normal tree is not that expensive. To cut a tree down, buck it up, get it off a yard, it's pretty simple. But when we go into, example, in North Carolina, we had a home that had 3 trees on top of it. He got a quote from a tree company to come in and take all those trees off of his house, and that quote was for $35,000, and we did it in a day and charged him nothing. So being able to take those large trees and have the equipment to come off people's house is huge, because though it doesn't cost us very much, it saves them a lot on the other end. So just so I keep with my time, the other style of trip we do involved with the disaster work is we do rebuild trips. 8 Days of Hope's rebuild trips are structured quite a bit differently than a lot of organizations. A lot of organizations target long-term relief. So they'll come into an area, they'll set up to rebuild, and they might be there for 3-4 years, continuing to help and serve that area. We don't stick around that long because due to our disaster response arm and the safe house arm that I'll get to, we're just moving too much in the other arms to commit like that. So instead what we do is we bring in a large group of volunteers for a short period of time. So our rebuilding trips for the missionaries last 2 weeks, but for the volunteers they're a week long. So we come in the first week and we get everything ready. We get the jobs looked at, we get papers signed, T's crossed, I's dotted, get all the material on site ready to go. And our rebuilding trips can be anywhere from 1,000 volunteers all the way up to the largest one we had 2,400 volunteers at one point in time. So when I say we bring in a lot of people for a short time, we're doing millions of dollars of work in a week. So what we'll do is we'll come in and we'll find all the long-term disaster groups that have been working in these areas for a long time, and we'll say, let us see your list. Let us see the houses that you still have that need help. Let's see what you haven't reached or what you haven't been able to finish. Let us see it. And we'll come in taking those lists and knock out item by item as much as we can in a short period of time, and then we give it back to them when we leave. So we will advance a small, like Amory, Mississippi, when we went and did the rebuild there, which that's the picture from inside the tent. They didn't have a church big enough that could house us in that community, because you bring that many people in, there's not a lot of buildings that big. So we had to set up a tent that we could do all of our morning and evening devotions on. Amory is about the size of Rensselaer. I looked it up, and they only got about 500 more people in their population. It's about this big. When we came into Amory and did our rebuilding event, the long-term recovery organization said we fast-forwarded their rebuilding process by about 3 years in the span of a week, because we just come in efficiently doing a lot of stuff really quick. Normally when I go on these trips, I get put in charge of a roofing crew or all the roofing crews, one or the other, and it's not uncommon for me to go out there and take a group of 9 to 12 people and do 7 to 8 roofs in a week. Like, we move at a very fast pace. It's a lot of fun, it's just a lot of fast pace, and we are ready to go to bed when we leave.
It's also family-friendly trip.
Yes. So I kind of forgot this. This is why I said this, why I keep her around. So for the disaster response, you got to be 18 years old and up. It does not.
16.
Oh, they moved it this year. That's right. It's 16 now. See, this is why I keep it. Anyway, so you got to be 16 years old and up to come on the disaster response. You don't have to have any skill set. You don't have to have any tools. We will help apply you to wherever your skills or wherever you want to be is best served. For the rebuilding trips, these are our family-friendly events. It's the one event that we do that all ages, all skill groups, whatever it is, are fully welcome. 8 Days of Hope does not charge you housing to volunteer. They give you a place to set up a cot. They give you 3 meals a day. All your cost is just your travel and bouncing around. So as far as a trip to bring your families on, to kind of introduce them to mission trips, this is great. When you come to a rebuilding trip, since we know that your skills, you probably don't know how to build the entire house. There's not very many people out there who do. But you might be good at painting, or you might be good at siding or roofing, or whatever the niche may be. You pick which one of those topics you think you and your family would be good at. So if you got kids and you think, hey, I can help with painting, that's fine. You can take them and sign up for the painting cruise. My wife's telling me I'm going to go over time, so you guys are going to be here a while. Anyway. So the rebuilding trips are a lot of fun, because a lot of times when I'm doing the roof cruise, it's not uncommon for me to have 3, 4, or even 6-year-old kids down on the ground running the nail magnets and just goofing off with mom as we're working on the roofs. It's neat to bring the whole families together on one thing. It's not just a group of guys out there grunting and throwing stuff around. We've got everybody there. Anyway, so now we got to get to this other arm, and this is the one I spend most of our time at, because with my skill set, and as my wife is quickly learning construction, her skill sets as well, this is where the ministry best sees our skills applied, our Safe House ministry. So when we did the rebuilding trips, because 8 Days of Hope's been doing rebuilding trips since back in Katrina. So when we did the rebuilding trips, we started building a very vast network of volunteers that were skilled. They are craftsmen, they are contractors in all sorts of different trades. And looking at that database, we saw the problem of human trafficking here in the United States, and so 8 Days of Hope started looking at how can we work on that. Our skills, we're not really going to be great at doing the counseling. We're not going to be great at working with people or rescuing people. Our skills just don't apply there. How can we throw into that? So then the Safe House arm was born back in 2019, I believe it was. So what we do instead is when groups like Safe Harbor, Mercy Gate, there's a lot of different examples I got of that, I think, on that slide. When groups like this come to us and say, hey, we need an office renovated because we bought a building, but it doesn't suit our needs. We need it renovated to suit our needs. We come in and supply the labor, and we'll do the renovations. Safe Harbor, which is kind of that's a computer-generated photo, but it's really close to what it looks like. We just can't show you the real photos of what it looks like. Safe Harbor was an entire campus build. So we had a ministry that was specifically targeting for young teenage girls. The age they target is for 12 to 19. So specifically for human trafficked young girls here in the United States, let's get that clear, they're not bringing them from overseas for whatever to come here. They were trafficked here in the United States. So these young girls will come to this site. They can live here. There is a doctor clinic on site. There is a school on site. There is a church on site. When they come in, there's no reason for them to leave. It is considered a safe facility in Ohio where they can come in and live there to catch up their schooling. Not only that, but they get introduced to Christ. So we built the first 6 buildings on Safe Harbor about 2 years ago, and they've been open for about a year now. We just got the chance to go back and start their gym here 2 weeks ago, and that's where I'll be going on Fridays to help finish the new gymnasium. Since the 1 year that they have been open, there's been 4 girls come to that facility and accept Christ. There has been 3 girls baptized at that facility. and they are just had a new girl show up on site here last week. So it has already been an immense impact, because that is the goal. Not only are we trying to rescue, but we're trying to show that though the men on earth may not have treated you very well and people here may not have done very good, you got an earthly Father that loves you for all eternity. That is the goal. So to be able to come back to this facility after building it the first time and getting able to hear the process, we don't get to interact with the girls. The most that we've ever interacted with any of them on the site is waving hay as we're walking to work. That's it. They kind of keep them separated for good reason. But anyway, to be able to watch their Facebook page, for example, back in December, they had pictures of the sled lines going down the big hill out there in Ohio. Just watching those kids, knowing what they've been through, the uttermost evils that they've endured. They're being kids now. They do stuff like they'll have movie nights now. They'll have sleepovers where they'll come over to each other's cottages and go back and forth. They're sledding up and down the hill. Just seeing the glimpses of them being able to be kids after everything they went through is huge. Let's see, where am I? Here we go. So these are some of the statistics, because I want to stress this point just a little bit as we spend time in here. A lot of people have put it in their mind that this is something where they're brought from Mexico up. Actually, more often than not here in the United States, the women that are trafficked, I think my wife changed my statistics, so I don't know them all, but it's somewhere around 60% of the women trafficked in the United States are United States citizen. They're not brought from somewhere else, they're here. One of the most common forms of trafficking here in the United States is familial, where it is family exploiting family. They're not taken, it's not like the movies, it is family exploiting family. The world and the news likes to paint us men, and I'm going to bring this in just a little bit because it's important to me. The world and the news likes to paint us men like we're the problem. What they forget is that we are also the solution. If we look at the example of Christ, he was the lion and the lamb. We need to be the lion against the evil, and we need to be the lamb with these girls. We need to get behind them, and we need to support them. For the world to paint and say we're only the problem, they're missing the solution. That's part of what's on my heart and why this is so important to me, is I get to be part of the solution. Even though I'm just swinging a hammer, I get to give other people the chance to minister to these girls and these women that come through these facilities. Let's see. Any questions? Because I'm kind of running through pretty quick here and I get on a monologue, but if there's any questions, stop me. Okay, so kind of an example to express how much we do. So here's an example of some different places we've been. Some statistics that I have from last year. So last year alone, me and my wife worked in 10 different states on various different sites. We drove through 16 different states on the way to get there. Those numbers don't overlap, so if you're really keeping track, we were in 26 different states last year. We served on site with 8 Days of Hope around 150 days out of the year last year. We served almost 40 days with other missions last year. And then you add travel time on top of that, we served somewhere around the ballpark of 220 days last year. So when we say this is our full-time job, it's our full-time job. We put 36,000 miles on the pickup truck last year. All right. So how can you help? This is where we're going to get important. In my opinion, the most fun way is come volunteer with us. Because I can sit here and try to tell you stories and explain stuff all day. I don't think anyone will ever truly understand, or at least I wouldn't until you got there. The opportunities are great. The other option is prayers. We have a whole lot of prayers, and we're constantly updating them on the newsletters and the website that we'll have, and I'll show you a link to that in a little bit. And after this is over, if we get your emails or mailing address, if you'd like, we'll start sending you the newsletters too. But the prayer needs are constantly changing, and they're constantly there, because with being on the road that much, you think about how much stuff you got to plan for a vacation. It's the same amount of travel just year round. So we are always planning, shifting, moving, a little bit of in stuff. Since we got married, we've been looking for a house to buy to move into, because we wanted to have a home here at home that we can start putting kids in eventually, which makes my mother-in-law very happy. But looking at the prices and the way things are, and me being a contractor, it just didn't make much sense. So we're going the other route, and instead we're going to build a pole barn on some farm ground that the family owns. Much cheaper. We're going to build a pole barn and park our camper in it. We live in our camper for 2/3 out of the year anyway. It's not much of a jump to make a place to park it here. So we're going to be starting that process. It's actually, the dirt work's already started now, so we've already started it. We need a lot of prayers with that for discernment, decision-making, financial stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff moving, and I'm not home to do most of it, so we're figuring it out. The last thing that I'll mention is financials. With that thought, with how much that we travel, our biggest expense is fuel, which I think goes to my next one. So the biggest expense is fuel or equipment uses of driving the truck and trailer and dragging it all over God's green earth. I know this is really tiny, so I'll sub it up. One of the fundraiser programs that we have is called Sponsored by the Mile. So we keep track of how many miles that we travel all year long, and we just ask that if you feel led, to pledge a certain amount per mile. So like for an example, if we drove 20,000 miles and you pledged 1 cent, it'd be about $200 a year. So you can change the cents however you want to see fit, but that's one of the ways we kind of get ahead of our fuel cost is we see how much by the mile we're sponsored for. Right now, it's like 50% of our fuel cost is covered through this program. There's also all the normal ways with the monthly checks. Those are huge because monthly checks allow us to budget. We know what's coming in roughly next month, so we can budget for what next month looks like. So we kind of stress that one because it allows us to look to the future. Though God has a funny way of doing things. He always gives me the work to do and then lets me know where the money's coming from. Normally when we're already there, he never does it in the other order. Anyway, how can you keep in contact with us? We have a website where you can also get our newsletters by email or by mail. We do them every other month because we started doing it by the quarter, and eventually the newsletter got so long with how much we were doing in a quarter, we had to shorten it. We also have a Facebook that we try to keep updated the best we can. When we're on a rebuild or a rapid response, it's updated pretty good on what's going on about every other day. The safe house is where we can't take a lot of photos and we can't put stuff on social media because the locations are secret. That stuff is, normally we'll post whatever the mission we worked for is put on their Facebook, so it seems really scattered and it doesn't exactly represent how much we've been there, but that's because we can't expose the sites. As also my phone number, if there's any questions or you want to call or you want to get in contest to talk at another church, talk at another church function or whatever it may be, there's another way to get a hold of us. So my wife made this thing called a QR code that I still am, I'm a young guy, but I think I'm old when it comes to technology. So I'm not entirely sure how all that stuff functions, but that's a QR code I think that links to our website if it's done the way I think. Yeah, okay, she's proud of herself for it. So if you know what that is, then hopefully it works right. Let's see here. Oh, and then I'm down into yours. Is there any questions? I kind of go through that in a quick hurry, trying to keep so much in a little bit of time and still get a lot of detail in there. Is there any questions that go with that? I'm much better at conversation than I am monologue, so afterwards, if you want to talk to me, please do.
I see a lot of people checking out those QR codes. Yeah, Dave.
Can you go back to the slide that shows the financial one more back?
That one? There you go. In which, if you're interested in this, we'll get you a copy of the form and stuff to fill it out. We'll hatch out all this information on it, too. I'll have to send it to you because I don't think I brought it.
Hey, it'll be up on the Trinity's Facebook page and bigger, so if people want to see this after you leave and stuff.
Okay, that'll work great.
Any other questions? Well, I sure enjoyed you sharing your missionary work with you. And last year was our first year of sponsoring, sharing funds with Ryan and his wife Sarah. I have to think about that because Brian Smith and Ryan Smith, I was always calling him Brian because we got a Ryan. Okay, so it's Brian. But we're really glad to be able to. We're just proud to share funds with you through our missions offerings, which you had an envelope in the bulletin today. That's how those funds go to help support missionaries like Ryan and Sarah. So we're glad you shared with us this morning. Thank you.